We are live, and I'll get to see all of you guys coming in soon. And today we're going to be continuing our Freedom Friday exploration by getting on board the Good Ship relationship. As a poll a few days ago, and I asked you, where did you want to focus? What would be your focus in terms of where you want to look, what angle, in terms of relationship? And the overwhelming majority of you said the relationship to self. So I want to say kudos because that was very highly intuitive, because no matter where I was going to start sailing around this concept of relationship, it was always going to come back to the fact that it is all about your relationship to self, that our connection to everything outside of ourselves, whether that be, if you saw my lovely picture, food and drink, or nature, or other people, my fantastic, crazy, intense, beautiful husband, or our families, our parents, everything. The connection to everything begins with your connection to yourself. And because everything is trying to guide us on our spiritual journey, all of those relationships are just mirrors of what we're trying to dive into within ourselves. So, for those of you who tuned in last week, I began by sharing a story about an awakening, body, mind, and spirit, that happened in myself. And if you remember, I was awakened because there was a very stuck, stagnant relationship that I was experiencing on the outside in my connection with my own parents. And as I awakened to that connection and started working through it outside of myself, it opened up how I needed to completely rework how I was connecting to all of this. It made me aware of that. I began to see the mirror, explore the mirror. Now I'm here to tell you that I transplanted myself at that time. So I was living here and I moved out east. And when I experienced that move, I was like, yeah, there was this feeling like I was going to be free of that intense, stuck situation, and that everything was going to completely transform just with that move. What happened was, when I arrived at my beautiful seaside destination, where we were living in New Jersey for 3 years, I realized very quickly that the most deep, I was hiding a lot of stagnation inside of myself. So that issues in the relationship on the outside, even though I removed the visible level of that, what kind of bubbled to the surface was all the invisible tendrils of what that relationship was there to teach me. Not only that, but I became very aware of how I was recreating almost the exact kind of circumstances that I had with my mom in different relationships, like landlords, people that I would meet that would become my friend, and then something would show up and I'm like, what is this? And then of course, the tendency is to be like, all right, I can separate myself from that. No, those are there as lessons. Those are there as teachers. So I want to start diving into this a little more with an exercise. I posted this on Facebook, so we've got a few people who are here live. So if you're brave enough, what do you see? Somebody comment. What do you see on this page? Oh, it's so quiet. All right, no problem. We can still go with this if no one's brave enough to comment. So, yeah, most people, their eyes are going to focus on the black. Thank you, Carmen Fink. Woo, Carmen! So, yes, that's where I was going to go, is that most of us, our perception goes immediately to the black dot that's on the center of this page. What else is here? This expansive openness of bright white light. So I'm not denying that black dot isn't there. I'm also saying that in the biggest picture of things, we also have this beautiful, bright, white, expansive space around the black dot. So one of the ways of thinking about this, let me rewind a second. The key with relationship is going to be that you have to learn and practice stepping into what I shall call radical self-acceptance. Radical compassion for all of you, all aspects of you. So if we look at this black dot, we could think of this like, oh God, I shouldn't have eaten that. We could think of this as being like, how did I get myself stuck in this same pattern again, in a personal relationship? We could look at it, in relation, same thing with our work, it's like, how did I miss the mark on this again? So these are all these aspects, these moments that look like they're problems. And like we talked about last time, within every problem becomes an opportunity, a gift. And every problem has its purpose and it has its right to exist. And one of the problems we get into, one of the challenges we get into for ourselves is when we start rejecting those parts of ourselves that feel like a little like, ooh, I don't really want you to see that that's there. That's not there. That's, And so then, what happens? Because it so desperately wants to be seen and heard and held and accepted, it's going to get louder. I'm trying to get to the camera. Louder, louder, louder. And it's going to fill up more in different ways. And it's going to create different things inside your body because it's trying to get you to understand that, hey, if you want to grow a deeper connection with relationship to yourself, and relationship to anything outside of yourself, you're going to have to look at me. You're going to have to be with me, and you're going to have to understand why this part of me is here. So behind me, you can see another black dot right there. So when we shift the framework, this is really just a bigger picture from here to seeing the fullest picture of, yes, that black dot is part of this big picture. Oh my goodness, and even this cycle over here where the black becomes all-encompassing, but even when we're at the peak of the intensity of what we're experiencing, that's in the darker side of things, the light is there. Even we're in that peak of intensity, we're in the process of transforming to a new cycle. And this is happening all the time. In every different level of things we're experiencing in our bodies and things that we're experiencing in our life, things that are happening on the planet. This is literally natural law. So the law of complementarity, which is the quantum physics way of talking about it, is something exists, is equal and opposite, has to exist. Otherwise it can't exist. So if we're here on this planet, this has every right to exist. So all those pieces and parts of you, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be held, and they want you to start to wake up to where is it trying to guide you? What is it trying to show you? Yes, I like that. Amber mentioned that the black dot could also be a hole, which, yeah, I mean, when you think about the concept of what a black hole is and that abyss, it's not necessarily a negative thing. That's a porthole, right? And that's the concept, is that something that may seem like in my experience of, oh my God, this is so much stagnation, it's just going to end me, became a portal that it created extreme expansion. But I only got there through beginning to practice, okay, there are no accidents. Everything is happening for a higher purpose. Everything is happening for good. How can I start to see that? How can I start to connect to that? So I want to bring in some of our wise bodily teachers that can show us an angle of how we can support ourselves in building our connection with self and learning how to step into that radical self-acceptance, radical compassion. So right here, we have our lungs, our beautiful lungs. And what's right there in the middle of the lungs? Our heart is nestled right there in between the lungs. So the lung, think about what it does, the breath of life, right? So you breathe in, you breathe out, you receive, you filter what you want to keep, and then you let go of what you're done with. It's out. Breathe in, breathe out. So when I talk about this at a functional level of what the organ is actually doing in our bodies, this is also true from an emotional, spiritual perspective, how that energy, how that consciousness of the lung functions in our body. So the lung has to be super duper crystal clear. Like it has to be judged and make a clarity of choice. Like, ew, I don't want that. I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna keep this. How it does that though is not controlling. It's not, it's a judgment that comes from this higher level picture of all that is. It's not saying like this is bad and wrong and toxic and it's just saying like this is no longer what I need. I'm going to take in more of, I've created space for more of what I'm ready to receive. So the lung is also metal and energy. So it is, it's a clarity of like this, right? At a really high level though, if you think about metal as an element, there's water, there's fire, there's earth, those all seem like, ooh, yeah, I can see how those move and flow. How does metal flow? If you look at it with an electron microscope, the electrons and metal are vibrating incredibly fast. So at a quantum level, there's actually more space than there is solid matter and metal. And what can enhance that quality of metal, to make it more fluid, to make it more responsive, is our fire. And where in Chinese medicine is the fire essence associated with? Our heart. So here we have these two beautiful organs of connection, our lungs and our heart. So the lung, in terms of how we connect, this is really about like kind of the more nitty-gritty interpersonal relationships. And it's interesting because that is what the lung does at an energetic level in the body, is it takes in the essence of what we digest. And I mean food, I mean information, all of it. And it looks at it and it decides, based upon relationship and connection to the other organs, who is going to receive what. So it is a connector in that way, energetically. So at the very human body level and how we would embody that person to person and with our work and such, it is helping us make those moment-to-moment decisions of how we're going to connect. So another way you can think of it, like, you know, very naturally, relationship, right? Relationship with yourself, relationship with others is not something that should be static, because energies and consciousness and emotions are constantly changing. And the lung will show us this. Is every single one of your breaths the same? Every single breath is different. And every single breath is different for many, 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 many different reasons. Things that have to do with the function of your body, things that have to do with your emotions, things that have to do with things that are happening outside of you that you may not even understand. So the same concept goes with all of our relationships. The connections are constantly shifting and changing and shifting and changing. So the question becomes, are you getting contracted and trying to control because it's so overwhelming? Or are you able to open up and to become responsive? Because the truth is, in nature, there's no such thing as control. There's not control. There's very, very high level cooperation, collaboration, and relationship. So the concept of control is something that goes against nature that we humans are challenged by. So when you find that happening, that's very much a lung energy that's become too tight. I only want this. I only want that. I only want this. I only want that. I don't want that. And then also for, you know, when you think about it, here we have the lungs, here we have the heart. Sometimes we have these experiences. I'm not trying to judge when we get that way. Okay? I was there and it had its place and purpose. When I first fled, I, you know, began to do my own work. Something that I realized that I did and had, I wasn't conscious of it until I started opening up, is that I really was wearing a suit of armor, an invisible suit of armor. And that armor was necessary because inside of me, there was this incredible rawness this traumatic, hurt little child, and she was scared shitless, and she needed to wear that suit of armor to protect herself and to give her the space that she needed at that time to heal. So as my spiritual journey went along, and I began to wiggle this open, by opening my heart, by beginning to really practice seeing the higher spiritual perspective, which is what the heart offers, right? That compassion, that radical compassion. Then I started to experience that this no longer fits. It's began to feel restrictive. What was once protective began to become restrictive. And I literally would see that intense physical things would start to come out. I began to project it into relationship. So I realized that there was still some of that unconscious patterning that I began to project out into other relationships that was time to let go of. And that was that higher level of bringing in my acceptance that that little girl was still in there, and that little girl was still feeling wounded, and that was okay. And that I didn't need to have the suit of armor anymore. In a way, it felt like, being in a cage with the doors open. I'm completely free. I'm completely safe. It's safe. It's safe now. And my healing won't continue. It will end. I will terminate unless I step outside in all my rawness and all my vulnerability and take it from that next level. So the beauty that we're being offered right now is we're moving into the season of our heart. So the heart is our spirit. It is the house of our spirit. It is guiding us to connect with our spirit. It is guiding us to connect to our purpose, which is really the highest level of what relationship is about: body, mind, and spirit. So what I'd like to do is guide us just for a few moments in a breath practice. And in a way, with what we talked about the lungs resting here and the heart resting here, we're going to be trying to connect both of those energies together. So at a spiritual level and emotional level, they can really, we're trying to re-engage that and connect with that. So speaking of sidedness, right? So the left side of the body is yin. The right side of the body is yang. So when we talk about relationship and wanting to bring that higher level picture of interconnectedness together, when we put our hands together in prayer pose, we are connecting yin and yang. We're connecting in relationship. The thing, I'm going to give you a little trick. If you notice, my hands aren't completely flat against each other. So at heart level, palm to palm, yin to yang, with a little bit of space in between for that heart spirit magic to pop in, wherever it wants to come from. So when we do this breath, we're going to be doing a breath that's called spirit gate breathing. When you breathe in, you're going to draw your belly in. And when you breathe out, you're going to push your belly out. So breathing in through the nose, and we'll pause for a count of 3. And breathing out through the mouth. So the purpose of focusing on our navel, this is an energy gate. You were connected via your umbilical cord to your mother in utero. I don't care how complicated your relationship is with your mother, that time you were being held in a womb of divine unconditional love, right? And that's what we really want to open up into so we can get to that space of radical compassion for self. So when we breathe into the navel, drawing the energy in, we're reawakening that connection that we have to that time and space where we absolutely knew we were directly connected to unconditional divine love, and we fully accepted, and we're so super excited to be alive. So I'm just gonna put music that I don't think that Facebook will knock us down for. So for the last couple of minutes together, connecting yin to yang, palm to palm. Eyes closed. Breathing in, drawing the belly in. Breathing out, pushing the belly out. Breathing in, drawing your belly in. Remembering that you are always connected to that unconditional love that flows through you from your heart, through your spirit. Breathing out. Breathing in. Feeling whole. Breathing out. Letting go. Do a few more of these breaths on your own, and then I will wrap us for the day. Breathing in, connecting fully to you, beautiful you. Breathing out. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. And remember, you have this with you, this connection, this reminder. It literally, you can't get rid of it. It's right there. It's right here. It's all around you. Have a beautiful weekend. Take care.